Hi, welcome to Pause Uni's For Students by Students podcast. I'm your host, Nola, and on this podcast we have student-led conversations about mental and emotional health. In this episode, we are joined by Patrick and N, Patrick being a practitioner with Pause Uni and N being a student at the University of Birmingham, and they're having a discussion on AI and mental health. Now, this is a really interesting and new topic, which we're still doing a lot of research about, but we know enough to give you a little bit of a helping hand. So listen up. Thanks.
Okay, and I'm joined by N.
Hello.
N, what are your thoughts on AI and wellbeing?
Well, I think AI has been obviously something that's been very up and coming, and it's been a very useful tool for me actually, personally. I think I use it quite a bit, but also obviously on social media, a lot of people are talking about some of the cons of AI, and like how it might, affect artists' lifestyles or like how people use it in unethical ways. So I think there are discussions to be made on both sides.
Okay, so how do you use AI?
Well, in my studies on my day-to-day, I think I do use AI to help me understand some concepts. Sometimes, honestly, if I'm being very honest, my lecturers, I hope they never hear this, but sometimes they give us pre-readings to do, and I just don't have time to do it. And so I just put the pre-reading in the AI, like ChatGPT or something, and I'm like, please help me summarize this. So if the teacher asks if I did a pre-reading, technically I did do it, but I didn't. And I think, I try not to do that because obviously there's still benefits in reading the full thing. And if I do have time to catch up, I will do that. But it is helpful to help me break down some of these tasks when I'm doing my assignments as well. To help me when I have a lot of ideas and I'm not sure what's useful, what's not useful. It can kind of help me figure out what fits into my structure or how I can structure it. Yeah, that's how I kind of use it in my day-to-day.
Okay, so it sort of helps you to break everything down, make it so that it's not as overwhelming as like, I've got all this stuff to cover.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really good. And I know you mentioned about using it ethically.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on using it ethically versus what would be not so ethical?
Right. I think this is an interesting question. For my course, we had to do like 2 full lectures on this topic. And we talked about using it in studies. So obviously the university has specific guidelines on how you can use AI, on plagiarism rules and all of that. But I think generally the rule of thumb is like you're not copying directly off AI or you're not using it to give you answers. So like I cannot tell it to write my essay for me, or I can't ask it to give me my argument points. But perhaps I can ask, what do you think about this point? Or like, does my sentence here make sense? Can you, like, how can I better structure my points here? And so just using it that way is considered ethical because you are still putting in your own work into it and you're just asking it for a little bit of help versus like asking it to generate answers for you. And in terms of actually using it ethically in social work, I think that's an interesting topic as well because we linked it back to like, things like how the AI uses your information. If you're feeding it information, some of the information you're giving it is really private. So how might that affect different people or even like yourself if you are giving it private information about yourself?
Yeah, because I guess especially in social work, there's like the confidentiality element, and if you're putting stuff in that's like private information, where's that going?
Yeah.
Is someone else going to use it? Is that breaking the trust with the person you're working with? Okay. Yeah. So in terms of that, do you have any sort of distinctions on where you would use it in social work?
Where I would use it in social work. I think something that is helpful is, there is actually some like companies trialing out the use of AI models in social work, mainly to help keep track of like administrative tasks, note taking, that sort of thing. And obviously there are questions then in the organizations about whether the information is private. And the examples that we did, the case studies that we did look at in class were all was from an AI model that was like said that they were private and they showed information about how they kept the privacy and all of that. But obviously, normally using like ChatGPT and things like that, we would, if you had to ask for advice, my lecturer did mention that we could probably put some information in, but we have to make sure that we keep information confidential by not like stating people's names, for example. So I can give a very vague general idea of like, this is a situation very broadly, what legislation might I use to apply, for example, but not necessarily like giving it the full information about case, not specifics like age, and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So almost like the kind of stuff that you might be able to ask a peer, but
Yeah.
not the stuff that you would
Yeah,
feedback from a
exactly.
person. Yeah. Okay. And I guess it depends on which like different AI model you're using, because ChatGPT, they use a lot more of the data, whereas if there's ones that say they're private, you hopefully trust that they'd.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there are different ones as well. Actually, I even had like one specific module, which our assignment was to use AI. So we were part of the assignment that is marked is you have to make AI generate your essay, and then we had to write a whole analysis of how good or bad the AI essay was, and then we write the essay on our own. So I think it's good that the university, I don't know about other courses, but at least the university is making efforts, since they know that students are going to be using AI anyway, to like help us to be able to identify how to use it better, how to use it properly, and also identify what's good and bad about it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting assignment. Did you
Yeah.
notice anything from that essay that you were like, this is really bad, or anything that was really good about it?
Honestly, I've been using AI for quite a few years, so I feel like it wasn't really anything new, but I guess just some highlights so that you do have to fact check a lot of the information, and sometimes they give you a source and they tell you it's an academic source, but then you look at the source and you're like, actually, that's not really a proper journal article. Yeah, that kind of thing. Or it might not. I think for the essay that I generated, I had to generate it twice because I gave it a lot of like instructions in the first round, and it just didn't listen to everything, so I had to ask it to redo that and improve on this. And even then it was still like very one-sided, so I think that's an issue with AI, right? It can give you information that's very biased sometimes, and whereas like if from a human perspective, like when I write an article, I want to make sure that it has more perspectives.
Yeah, and like if you're not conscious of the fact that it's biased, you could take what it's saying to be completely true, or like you're not fact checking. If it's making up a fake article or something, you might believe that there's like this great study that proves something, but it's a load of rubbish.
Yeah, I agree. I think actually some people might argue that that's also the case before AI. Like if you were to look at news articles, some of them are biased, and if you don't know how to do fact checking properly, then it could affect that. But yeah.
Okay. And then sort of separately to that, AI is like a great tool for studying, and as you said, like digesting information, making it much easier. But do you use it for anything more personal in your day-to-day life outside of uni?
I think not really, but I do know some people who kind of do get overwhelmed, and then they use the AI to help them like figure out what they need to do to break down tasks, like outside of school as well, or in to break down their schedule to help them like plan out their day and what to do outside of uni. I think I have read somewhere that some people do use it as like a partner of sorts, like to converse with when they are feeling lonely. Yeah, so I have read about that, but I personally have not done anything like that.
Yeah, you've used it more as a tool, but it can be used sort of to fill that social gap by some people, or to make sort of day-to-day tasks and planning and the stuff that can be quite overwhelming just that little bit simpler.
Yeah. But I guess speaking about well-being and mental health, I think sometimes AI can be useful in terms of like building relationships with other people as well. Even though myself, I have not used it directly to help me with like something like that. I have a friend who did, like, she was having some argument with someone else, and then she couldn't reach me at the point in time because I was like in class or something. And afterwards, she told me what happened, and she told me the whole story, and was like, because you weren't there for me at the time, I ended up having to use ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT to help me write my argument to this person that I was fighting with. And I guess it did provide her some kind of support in that moment when she was like having a conflict with someone else, to kind of support her through that, and also help her to make her point and perspective clear on that. I do remember one example recently that was quite funny to me. I was quite stressed out about some stuff, and I was feeling really upset. I ended up having like a little bit of a breakdown. And I was with my partner at the time, and he was kind of there and he was trying to comfort me, he was trying to distract me, he was asking me like, oh, okay, so what are you gonna do later and stuff. Then I got more annoyed at him because I'm like, I'm literally breaking down, I don't want to do anything, and you're asking me what I want to do later. And I didn't want to tell him what I wanted from him because, I'm in the middle of a breakdown. So I opened ChatGPT and I typed in what to do when your girlfriend is crying. And I gave it to him and he read it and he was like, okay, I know what to do next time. Like, it wasn't perfect. And when I read the answer, there were definitely things that obviously I think in terms of relation skills, like, can be improved. But I think it's a good start for people who might struggle a bit with like relationship building or communicating or like talking with each other.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And like, it's funny that it can be used in that way because I guess that's sort of bringing people together. But one of the concerns I've seen quite a lot is that because people are relying on that and talking to that, it's like feeding into loneliness because people then aren't communicating with real people, they're communicating with something that's just going to sort of say that they're right and always be on their side, but it's not a real person.
I think that is a real danger. If something's always feeding you information that makes you think you're right, it can be quite dangerous if people really believe in it too much. So I think at the end of the day, it's also a matter of balance and knowing how to like manage perspectives and still like have interactions with real people or at least be accepting of other perspectives.
Yeah, and like use it as a tool to improve your life and communicate with people, not as a replacement for like, I'm feeling lonely, I'm going to make this my friend. Because yeah, there's been like reports of that making people's symptoms of like psychosis or different things a lot worse because it's just feeding into what they're.
That's interesting. Can you share a bit more about like this psychosis?
So sort of if people believe stuff that's not true, like that they've got magic powers or something like that, sometimes it's like designed so that it agrees with what they say. So rather than challenging that and being like, oh, that might not be a true perspective, it kind of feeds into it and it's led to people being like, I am all powerful.
Right.
Stuff like that.
I haven't actually read about that, but yeah, it is quite dangerous. And I guess at the end of the day, we do still have to kind of if we're looking to AI as a means for support, it should not be like the only port of call. Definitely can be something in the moment that might support us for a little bit, but it is definitely important to have that human support and interaction.
Yeah, and I think sometimes like if you're struggling, it's the tool that's right there then, which some like human support you might have to wait, or there might be other factors where you can't access it straight away. But yeah, sometimes having that human support of someone that's able to challenge and like be on your side, but also can call out if something's like a problem.
Yeah.
Can be quite important.
Yeah, like the example that I gave earlier of my friend who was having a conflict with someone else. It was great that, she was able to use AI to help her share her perspective in the moment, but at the same time, to come to me after as well when she was trying to reach out to me and couldn't, and tell me like, oh, this is what happened, and also then hear my perspective on it. But I think that also goes back to how you choose to use AI, because for me personally, if I ever needed to do what she did, like ask AI for help for an argument, perhaps I might not say like, how do I tell this person that they are wrong? Maybe I'll phrase it more like a question, like, is my point fair? And maybe then sometimes you can ask AI to even give you both perspectives, which is something that might be helpful as well.
Yeah, so sort of knowing the problems with it can help you to ask it the questions in a way where it's not going to necessarily give you such a biased response. Yeah. So sort of using that little bit of like thought, like a longer thought process and thinking things through rather than jumping straight onto it and sort of emotionally.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I guess talking to someone else does have the effect of helping you take a step back and calm down rather than jumping straight into an argument or conflict. And perhaps AI can kind of be that temporary role as well.
Yeah, like it can be a tool, but it's not a solution for everything. It's choosing the right times and making sure it's like the right thing at the right time. I don't know what else. Are there any other places where you think that AI might be helpful to people?
I think we've kind of covered a lot of ground, but specifically, I think some people that might find it even more helpful than us is people who are neurodiverse. So for me personally, I have ADHD, and so definitely having something to help me with my tasks is very, very important and helpful for me because I tend to be quite chaotic and all over the place. So there's research that shows that for neurodiverse students, AI has helped them a lot more when they're very overwhelmed and they cannot really function and do their things. Because like people who are neurodiverse might think things in quite different ways. So having it help to break things down into checklists or to offer things like text to speech might be helpful for them to actually study or do things that that like non-neurodiverse people might not necessarily need.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more accessible to them, and like it can tailor it to the way that they study and break tasks down so that it's not as overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I've seen as well you can sort of upload stuff to make a podcast and different things like that, so that you don't have to like sit and read a news article or a long paper.
Yeah.
Which obviously like you're going to miss little bits and you might have to fact check it, but it can help to process the information rather than it being just on like 10 pieces of paper and
yeah, exactly. Or even like if you're just stuck on how to start, it might help you give you like okay, maybe step 1 that isn't overwhelming could be this. Or even help you to start brainstorming some like little ideas here and there.
Yeah. So it just sort of takes that barrier to entry out and makes it so it's not just like a blank page you're staring at. You've moved forward a little bit before you start.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I do work with some like youth charity as well, and I run some programs for different youths. I facilitate programs, and I was trying to come up with some games for a few workshops before, like games that can help youths like reflect about themselves. And I was really stuck because I was very bored of doing the same games over and over again. So I was like, I want to do something new and fun and interesting, and I had zero idea how to start with it. So I think in moments like that, when we're talking about brainstorming and to take the first step, that was really helpful. Otherwise, I would have just given up on the idea and, went back to all the boring stuff that everyone's already done.
Yeah, sometimes having those new suggestions, even if you don't use them, it can give you a different sort of process to start making something new. Yeah.
Honestly, I think the ideas that the AI gave me were quite bad. Like, if I was a student, I would hate playing those games. They're so boring. But it did give me like a kind of nice like head start to think of how I might combine some of these games to make it more interesting.
Yeah. So again, it like might not have given you the finished product, but it's much better.
Yeah.
Getting you somewhere than staring at that blank page.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And so like going forward, where do you see AI going?
I mean, I think we can agree that like AI is definitely gonna only get bigger. It's here to stay, right? And even the university, like my professors are preparing for that and preparing us for it to use it more and all of that. So since it's becoming something that's more prominent, I think definitely probably education is gonna move in a way that enables us to use it or should teach us to use it in more ethical ways or to use it properly rather than over relying on it as well.
Yeah.
And it's a skill that people definitely should learn to have because we talked about the dangers of AI earlier and how if it's not like regulated or used properly, it can kind of cause more harm than help.
Yeah, so sort of the new skill is sort of learning how to use it effectively and what to ask it and where to go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as well, I come from like a mental health background and it potentially could really help with like waiting lists and getting people support. Like a big problem for mental health is that some people are waiting 2-3 years to see someone after they're referred. And it's not going to fix every problem, but there are some like apps that are specifically for mental health and they use a lot of the research and tools that are available. And so for some people who might not need as intensive support, it can help them to solve problems before they become a bigger deal.
Yeah.
Which could be quite good. But yeah, I guess a lot of the research around mental health support is that the relationship is really important. So if there's not a human, I guess the relationship might not be there. So it might not be as effective, but I guess the cleverer it gets, which it seems to be getting cleverer and cleverer every day, like it might get there where it's a lot more useful.
Yeah, I guess what you're saying is that it is quite helpful maybe in terms of like prevention when things are like going fine for people to learn more. But I guess when it gets to a certain stage, we definitely still need like a human touch to it.
Yeah, I think so. And like ultimately, I guess what we've kind of said is with AI, it can be really useful, but it's all about knowing how to use it and thinking it through rather than jumping straight to it as being like the ultimate solution.
Yeah, Definitely, it should never be an ultimate thing. I guess now we're talking about AI. In the past, we were talking about using social media and the internet. But I guess at the end of the day, the discussion's kind of always the same, to not over-rely, to still need to develop the skills to use these tools rather than like fully rely on these tools, whether it's like social media for news, social media for mental health advice, because it can be really toxic sometimes, or like having random article blogs on the internet about well-being. I mean, some of them are really helpful, right? Some of the websites from like credible sources, and AI can be as well. But yeah, as we've discussed, it does have to be balanced really well.
Yeah, and like in the same way that if you're reading through an article to do with mental health, you'd want to make sure it's a credible source. I guess with AI, it's almost picking the right tool that it's going to fit the purpose.
Yeah. Actually, I think something that's good about AI that has improved is that recently when you ask it questions, it does show you the sources. Like there's a little bubble at the bottom that tells you where it got its information from. So I think that's a useful tool for fact checking as well, to see like where is the AI getting this random sentence that they came up with from.
Yeah, and then if you're like, that looks like a really dodgy link, maybe don't trust it as much.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about quite a lot to do with AI there.
Yeah.
But what would you say are your like key takeaways from this discussion?
I think if I was to sum it up to 3 key takeaways, the first one would be kind of that AI is really useful as a tool. We've talked about so many ways that it can be helpful for people, whether it's for day-to-day tasks or mental health. But at the end of the day, it is something that must be balanced with human interaction, or must be fact-checked. And so that leads to a second point, right? You can't really over-rely on AI. You need to learn to use it as a tool rather than just using it randomly. And last takeaway would be that AI is definitely here to stay, just like the internet, just like social media. So as we did with the other things, we have to learn how to adapt to it and work with it, rather than, just saying that it's a bad thing and we shouldn't touch it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is here to stay, so it's learning to embrace it and use it in a way that fits into our lives.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's been really nice talking to you.
Thank you.
What a great conversation. AI and mental health is still something that we are researching, and I'm sure in the next few years, a lot of discovery will be made and a lot more information will be made available to the general public. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself and you're using it in a way that is beneficial, and not using it in a way in which you completely rely on it. Now, if you require any further support, then I suggest you go and speak with your college wellbeing officer, or if you're in serious need, then please go and have a conversation with Samaritans or Papyrus or any other national intervention service. I know that they are on hand to support you. Right, that brings a close to this episode. Please listen up for the next one. Thanks.